thanks everyone for coming. And thanks to the panel for showing up and being ready to share themselves today, because that's what we're going to talk about. It's everybody's journeys and our opinions informed by those journeys. So my name is Sebastian Van Heinigen. I'm here representing the RevOps Co-op. I'll be moderating, hopefully taking a back seat for most of this conversation. This is the most I expect to talk in the entire event, but I will be jumping in every now and then with my perspective. So today we're going to be hearing from Asia Corbett, Brianna Yarborough, Mark Belgrave, and Tisha Cable. Please tell me if I said anyone's name incorrectly. I'll pause. Okay, cool. So all of us have taken a unique path to get into RevOps, and we're all in different roles right now. And I'm sure there's some parts of the experience that overlap, but all of us have a very unique perspective informed by what we're going through. And so I want to just start with an introduction on everyone here, who you are, what you do, and why you think it's important for us to talk about this topic. So whoever wants to go first.
Okay. I'll go first. I am Tisha Cable. I'm currently the CEO of C-Model. C-Model is a revenue intelligence company, and we've got a SaaS tool coming to market. I am here today because one of the important things for me is giving voice to what happens when you work while Black. That experience is unique. It is specifically unique to Black women. And that particular challenge that we have of being invisible, unheard, disrespected, undermined, misunderstood, misrepresented, underrepresented, overworked are all things that I've experienced throughout my career. So that's why I'm here.
I love it.
Woo, Tisha, hard one to follow. I mean, you just said everything that I would have ever said about why I'm here. And so I'll just say who I am. I'm Brianna Yarborough. I am the Chief Revenue Operations Officer at C-Model, working with Tisha. And a little bit more about C-Model is that it's an on-demand analyst that really gives you analyzed outputs in contextual insights instead of the summarization that we typically get from the tools that exist today. And I'm here for that same reason. We are overworked, underrepresented, especially in leadership. I want to see more people that look like me. I want to hear from more people that look like me. I want to be the voice of reason. And so for that very reason, I am doing things like mentoring people that are coming into the tech world, helping educate them on revenue operations, and building up sort of a bench behind me so that I can kind of lead the way and help others kind of find their way into RevOps.
Awesome. I guess I'll go next. I'm Mark Belgrave. I'm the founder of a consulting company called Growth Robot. It's a revenue scaling company. My career arc is I started as a developer, basically a computer programmer, became a sales engineer, and then an individual contributor in sales for like 15 years, and then kind of fell into RevOps, all the things surrounding sales that helps increase the velocity of sales and the acceleration of that velocity. So I am a bit contrarian in that I have never entertained DEI conversations. In fact, I was very averse to them. So my upbringing is that I was born in Canada but grew up in Barbados, where Black and white got along. My best friend growing up was white. Don't you hate when people say that? Well, I'm not racist. Some of my best friends are like, and now I'm saying it like about a white person, but literally I grew up, one of my best friends was white as can be. And I never had the American context. Yes, there was slavery in Barbados, but basically Black and white got along in Barbados, and it was, to my mind, not a thing, racist. Turns out, looking back, that was not really correct. I went to school in Canada. Racism is a lot more subtle there. And I did not, and until recently, still have not looked at things through the lens of, this is happening to me because of my skin color. But in speaking with others, especially, conversations with Brianna and Asia, I'm realizing that a lot of things that may have happened because of my skin color, and I just was not paying attention to it. So I'm coming from a slightly different viewpoint, but just really excited to hear from all of those who can really eloquently speak to um, what's up and what needs to change.
Yeah, amazing. It's my turn. Um, I'm Asia Corbett, and I am currently Senior Revenue Operations Manager at Bread, which is a large fintech company. Um, I am here for many of the same reasons that these awesome people are here too, but really, really, really what drove me to this conversation today was to see for other young women to see people who look like them on the screen. Like, I don't think that outside of this group of people that I've met any any black people in operations, and so it's very hard to put yourself in those shoes. It's very hard to visualize yourself as a senior manager or an executive when you don't see people who look like you represented there. It just feels so far away. So that's why I'm here.
Love it.
Yes, yes. Thank you all. I think we're all here for similar reasons, and kind of the issue of representation is one that's really important to all of us here, and kind of something that we're all keeping in mind as we move forward. So we'll just jump right into it. I think, let's start at the function, and feel free to kind of fill us in on your experience getting into this role. But I'd love to just start, and this is just a pet project of mine, but what does RevOps mean to you? So, like, define RevOps in your terms, kind of as it exists in your current career.
Oh gosh, I love this question because I'm very vocal in communities and on LinkedIn about what revenue operations is and the philosophy around revenue operations. It is the discipline that empowers your revenue generating teams. And how do we do that? With business process design, systems oversight, reporting and analytics, insight and enablement, all of those things that support the entire go-to-market team underlying the buyer's journey to allow those people to bring in more revenue. Like, that's what they need to do. And I'm very passionate about how operations empowers teams.
Yeah, I 100% agree with all of that. I think I take a bit of a different approach in thinking about how revenue enables the organization from a business builder perspective. And so I kind of tie in things that are not typical of revenue operations, such as product operations or making sure that we are interlocked with our financial operations team. We're doing things with them like compensation planning or headcount planning, even with HR. And so it's really about building the business, being the glue and the foundation for everything that happens and goes on in that organization. The smaller the organization, the more you'll have to do. The larger the organization, sometimes the more you'll be responsible for, like deal desks or, the list goes on. RevOps is a very complex function, and it is very different at all types of businesses. Every business model makes it their own for what they need to be able to develop a revenue engine that gets them progressing and moving in the right direction. So we're talking strategy, process, workflows, data, analysis, technology, people. I mean, you really have to be a special type of person to be in a revenue operations position.
Facts. So I actually see RevOps in a few different ways. So there's like the technical side of what we do, right? You've got process, technology, tools. There's tying together different groups in the organizations, sales, finance, customer success, product. But then there's like this passion place, right? There's problem solving, barrier removing, truth telling, like all of those things sort of are what it means for me. So there's the work in itself, and then there's what the work actually reveals about an organization and where they're going.
Wow, that's deep. I hope you're recording this, Seb. That's a really good description. I'll give
We
mine.
are.
As I said before, I think of RevOps as everything that increases the velocity of sales and the acceleration of sales. So velocity is like, like distance travel per unit of time. So, you know, if you're increasing the velocity of sales, you're looking at, well, what did we do last month? What did we do last year? And how are we doing relative to that? And we want that number to be bigger. And then acceleration is if you're speeding up revenue growth, sorry, if you're increasing the velocity, you want the velocity of the velocity to be increased. So to me, that's everything that enables sellers to sell more and sell faster. So as mentioned before, that's some things that kind of are traditionally thought of as under the RevOps umbrella, like sales ops and marketing ops, but it's also FinOps, it's also people ops. It can also be DevOps, right? Like if especially if you have like a PLG led motion, DevOps is going to be a big part of getting to market quicker and enabling your sellers. And I broadly classify RevOps under three pillars, which is people, process, and technology. Things usually fall into one of those three camps.
Love it. Love it. Four very similar, but also very different answers. And so this is something I try to ask everybody because, the function is fairly new. I think the tasks within it are not, but we're just now starting to come around and decide that this is a function. And, every company and every person defines it differently. So thanks everyone for sharing.
Just one small comment on Tisha.
Yes.
Tisha's comment, like she was describing like not just the role, but a flow state within the role. Like when your head's down executing, there is a point where you like RevOps is revealing stuff about the business, and then you get to have those conversations. I especially like the part about truth telling. Like that's the flow state. That's where we want to be. We want to be like Michael Jordan, like pull up jumper. Yeah, any spot on the court, right? But you have to put in the work to get to that point. I like that.
I was going to say the same thing. I really love Tisha's answer because there's a lot of influence that goes into revenue operations. You might be pulling data and in the systems and doing all of this work to analyze and bubble up some sort of insight, but the influence on strategy, being a strategic leader and not an order taker, are a hard sort of balance to strike in the RevOps world. And so you have to be careful because there's a fine line there.
Yeah, super important, and why I advocate a lot for people who are want to get into RevOps or are getting into their career to really focus and double down on project management skills, because a lot of those things you can learn in like some PM courses. You don't have to be a certified project management professional, but those are like gaps I wish I filled earlier in my career rather than like stumbling through like, how do I present something to an executive, right? Like don't put 12 slides together, put 3, for example. So really, really good.
Love it.
Yeah, no, that's a big one. Is like a lot of people can put together the ideal buyer journey and decide, how all these things should work, but then how do we manage that change? Like that is a huge part of it. And then, the trust that you would have had to build up to even push that change through is, I agree. I agree with everyone here.
Absolutely. And you know what? Your comment makes me think that psychology courses should be required, mandatory for any type of RevOps disciplinary.
Yeah.
Because change management is really what it comes down to. Oh, CRM adoption? Yeah, that's in my remit. How do we get people to adopt CRM? What is that?
Yeah.
That's all human behavior and incentivization. It's all psychology.
Exactly. Alrighty, so I'll jump to the next question. This is another one that it changes. The definition changes from person to person. So what does diversity in employment mean to you?
Great question.
Okay, I'll go first. So this it's quite an interesting question to ask because it's all systematic to me, right? So Black people, we make up 13.9% of the U.S. population and 13.4% of the workforce, which means that we all work. So the problem is, what are we doing, right, when we're at work? So there's 8 point, I'm going to anchor on women here because it's the one area where I kind of pay the most attention. There are 8.5 million Black women in the workplace. 80% of them are in non-business roles, right? So when we talk diversity in the workplace, so having been a part of the 1.6% of vice presidents of anything in the US, you have to ask yourself, is diversity in the workplace an issue to be solved with more people, or is the issue to be solved with more opportunity? So I think when I think diversity in the workplace, I think nothing but opportunity. Give people opportunities and you will have diversity in the workplace. If we have so many of us present, so many of us there, then more of us can have a seat at the table in business roles as well.
100% agree with that. And I love that you brought data points. Tisha, upstaging me at every question. I love it. Thank you. That was amazing. I will also add to that and just say, for me, diversity in employment means all walks of life. I talk about intersectionality a lot. Where, I'm a woman, I'm Black, I'm lesbian, I'm a mother. All of these things amount to me as an individual. And so when I think of diversity in employment, I think of scrolling through a company's people on LinkedIn and seeing all walks of life. I want to see leaders that are a variation of colors. I want to see rainbow symbols in their headline. I want to see lots of different types of walks of life. And that's what really matters. And that's what I think good looks like. And sometimes I scroll through companies and I see people that look the same all the way through and through. And you think about how it happened, and it's all about, okay, you made a connection in college and y'all have followed each other and kind of grouped together and continued on and moved from company to company to company together. And it keeps growing and growing, and your network just follows you as you move along. And that's what I'm noticing the trending is. And no one is allowing people into that bucket and allowing them to have the same opportunity that they are continuing to have and continuing to see, because they've, made this table and they're like, you can't sit with us. And so we have to make our own way.
Love that. To just to pile on, like, my definition of diversity in employment is similar from the point of view of experiences and background. So to me, diversity, when it's done right, means you have a variety of people from with different perspectives, and those perspectives come from naturally different experiences. So like you said, Brianna, if you have a bunch of, okay, I'm just going to go there, white kids from the South who were in the same frat together and they started a business, the employee base is probably going to look a certain way. Not to say there won't be any representation of ethnic minorities, but the diversity of that company is likely going to be not our definition of good. And I think that, I agree with Tisha that it's about creating more opportunity. Opportunity for folks who look like us is, let's be honest, going to be created by people with experiences like us. Chances are those people with experiences like us are going to look like us too. It's kind of our responsibility. We're the ones who are going to create the change we want. We don't go to the establishment, to the man, and be like, hey, let us sit at the table. Even if we do get a seat at the table, will there be that same level of respect for what we bring to the table? No, because you can't really blame those people. They have a certain set of experiences. Can you go back and change their childhood, change their viewpoints? We form our values from ages 0 to 7. And after that, we're just like fine tuning. You know what I mean? We can't go back and change that. So we have to be responsible. We're in this spot. We have these experiences. We have to be responsible for creating those opportunities for people who are coming behind us. The good thing is I've moved to the US recently, and there's 335 million people in the US. Thank you for that stat, Tisha, about the percentage of us that are Black. I'm seeing many, many Black people taking charge of that in real estate, in various areas of financial literacy, to be honest, or education system for Blacks, specifically in the US. We're underserved in that area. And as part of our experience, we don't necessarily get the training on financial literacy and how to build wealth, for example, right? Don't buy the Beamer out of the $100,000, salary. Buy an asset and buy the Beamer when that asset is producing. Like a white guy on his boat in boat shoes, he's like, yeah, you, you didn't know that. He's got a different experience. I see a lot of Black leaders actually building that experience into the younger generation, and that gives me hope. But that doesn't take the burden off our shoulders, and that's part of why we're all here today.
Yeah. So if I could, just to because I hear what you're saying, Mark, but I think that it's super important that we consider the system, right? And we have to consider the history, right? Abraham Lincoln didn't free the slaves with anything. He freed them with nothing at all. And when he did that, he left them to fend for themselves and figure out how they were going to make it to the next level. So we always start at a deficit, right? All the time. So there's not a point in time unless someone makes a way specifically, and not just us a way for ourselves, but we're going to need our partners who are quote unquote allies to support how those seats at those tables are created for us. Those paths have to be made, and we're not going to be able to do it on our own. We know that because we're resilient people, right? Like I said, he freed us with nothing. We're resilient. Look at where some of us are, but then we have to turn around and look at where some of us aren't. And when we do that, we recognize that as much as we think we've made progress and as much opportunity as we think exists, it doesn't. There's still so much more that actually needs to be done in order for us to really develop those opportunities. And we can't do it by ourselves. We need others.
Fair enough. Not going to say I disagree with anything you just said.
All right. Should we spend more time on the diversity question, or do y'all want to move to the next one?
Let's keep going.
All right, we'll keep going. So next up is, how did you get here? Trace your career path from beginning to now, and feel free to fill us in on times where maybe your race may have held you back, or at least the biases against your race may have held you back.
Yeah, I started in very, very early on thinking I wanted to go into finance. So I spent the first couple of years of my career trying to get down the financial analyst path. I wanted to be a CFO. I was very focused on that vision. I had a 12-year plan, and I found myself getting into these tangential finance roles. So there was an aspect of doing journal entries and budget reconciliations and budget planning and managing the corporate card expenses. But then there was an aspect that was operational. How do we make things more efficient? How do we run meetings better? How do we keep everyone aligned on budget, finance things? And I came to a point where I'm like, okay, I need to make a decision, because early on in my career, I was like, titles are really important. And if I want to go into finance and my titles are not finance, I'm not going to be able to get where I want to go. So I just made the decision to go down the operations path, not really knowing what it meant. And I've been in a variety of different operations roles, but have been in operations for most of my career. Business operations, sales operations, done marketing operations, everything under that operations umbrella. And I have always been one of a handful of Black people in my company, in my department. Sometimes I've gone months without seeing any other people who look like me. And that is really hard. It's hard because as Black people in this country, in America, we have these experiences that we go through that other people can't understand, especially in work. The various microaggressions, hair touching. Oh, I went to Mexico and now I'm Black like you, even though you're not. Those comments that I can't even put into words. I'm trying to process all these things that I've gone through in my career and all these things that I've heard, and it's hard. it's really hard, and it's othering, and it's isolating. And you want to be there, and there's a certain part of you that may feel scared of getting fired. I certainly felt that way. In fact, I feel like I was let go at one company or they laid off people, but there were some things that leadership was doing and saying, particularly around uh, a lot of the Black Lives Matter movement, when it really was gaining steam. And I was like, well, how do we really feel about this? And I thought I was speaking in a safe space, and it wasn't a safe space. So I feel like there was something there, right? And not having a lot of people to talk to about it just is very lonely sometimes. So I feel at times in my career that my race has definitely held me back. I think someone in the comments earlier was saying that they don't, or their people in their company don't experience them as a typical Black person. And I have experienced a little bit of that too, because while I identify mostly as Black, and a lot of people see me as a Black woman, I'm also mixed. So there are some people who are like, well, you're not really Black, you're half Black. So,
Yeah.
it like all through my life, I got those comments. So I recognize there's like a privilege attached with that, with the colorism piece, but also the experience in corporate America and in tech is just so there's things that need to change, and I feel guilty sometimes because I don't use my voice and my platform to talk openly about issues enough, because I'm scared. I'm scared of getting fired, like straight up.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And as somebody said in the comments, thank you for being vulnerable and feeling confident enough in this space to be able to share that. And actually, I won't say anything. I'll go later. Who wants to go next?
I'm happy to go next. I started my career. So I live in Houston, Texas. I started my career in oil and gas, obviously. and one of the points that I want to make is that it's not just tech. It's everywhere. And Tisha mentioned it earlier. It's across the entire framework of where are you working? Are you working in a factory on the factory line? Probably. Or are you working in someone's business, etc. And I had a very unfortunate and intense situation in oil and gas, very highly political, run by older, as you can imagine, white men. And I was vying for, again, Asia, you mentioned this, you were vying for an opportunity in finance. You knew what you wanted to do. You had a plan. So did I. I had a plan for my career. I was doing everything the way that it was supposed to be done. And in order for me to make it from point A to point B, there was career ladders already established. I had 2 more stops before I made it to B on that career ladder. And they were lateral moves that required me to pick up and move my family to Billings, Montana, and to Oklahoma, not just any Oklahoma, Bartlesville, Oklahoma. As a Black lesbian woman in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, and Billings, Montana, can you imagine what that was like and the scares we got? And then only to come back and finally make it to B 4 years later, 4 years of my life wasted because I had to spend those 2 years in those other kind of just remote islands off by myself, doing major things for this organization, saving them millions of dollars at these refineries. I see someone go straight from where I was, my point A, straight into the point B because they didn't look like me. And I was furious. And I was told, I was promised over and over again, this is just something that we really need right now, and your help is going to be rewarded, and we're going to recognize you. And I was never received that reward. I never received that recognition. Later on in my career, as I had moved into tech, I was actually working in the finance department. I have visibility into everything. And I'm running reports, and we're thinking about leveling at our organization and looking to see, okay, across the board, let's think about how much people are getting paid and seeing the gross gaps of wealth between people. I found out someone that was in the same role as me as a director was making $50,000 more than me. And I was gaslit for 3 months, being told, hey, we're going to change it. We're going to update it. Don't you worry about it. Never changed, never changed, never changed. At the same organization, George Floyd's murder, CEO is crying, bawling his eyes out. We've got to step up and make a change. We've got to do something about this. We care about it. He comes to me. What can we do, Brianna? Okay, let's establish a DEI task force. Okay, will you lead it? I'll help with it. And so I co-led this. We put together a list of priorities of all the things that we needed to do. And it was simple stuff like, let's create safe spaces. Let's have a Slack channel, or let's start to form ERGs, or let's have an external speaker come, and let's create values for the organization. It was Series B company. We didn't have values yet. It doesn't make sense. What are we operating? How are we operating? And I, went to him with this list, and he said, oh, we'll go with one thing out of 25. And that's going to be the values, the free one. And guess what? Your values, I don't like them. I'm going to redo them myself. Why am I wasting my time? Because it's a volunteer aspect of what I'm doing. I have to do this on top of all of the other things that I'm doing for this organization, because guess what? The overwork doesn't go away. I'm spending my weekends working on things so that you can have what you need for your investors and your board. And I'm being paid $50,000 less than my counterpart that gets to enjoy work-life balance. And so that's been my experience. But I never wavered. I continued on this journey. I saw there was a critical need at this organization and developed revenue operations from the ground up, got rid of systems, implemented new ones while doing my other job. There's a whole nother job, a whole nother piece to this. And being, the resource for many, many things for this organization, helping build it up to the point that they grew their revenue by 300% in 14 months. And then had to go. I wasn't even worth my extra $50,000. And so that's the Black experience. That's just a portion of it. There's more stories.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I'll share. And thank you for sharing that, Brianna. That's super deep. I was not exposed to this, maybe because I wasn't in the US, like I was in Canada, which is a slightly different milieu. So I'll share one story from which actually happened in Canada, and then I'll share my philosophy. And first, I'll start by saying how I got here. As I mentioned, I started as a developer, programmer, moved into sales engineering, had a mentor at the first company I worked for in New York, where I was a sales engineer, and learned about commissions and instantly became a salesperson. And then did that for 15 years. And then because of my technical background, I started being asked to help enable the sales team. It started at one place where I was selling, like in Canada, I was selling mortgages. It started with building the spreadsheet to track commissions and making that all customized. And I was like, I like this stuff. Now everybody's like more motivated because they can see instantly like how taking 5 more calls per day impacts their take-home income because it's right there on the spreadsheet. It was very useful. Everybody used it. And that was the beginning of my RevOps journey. But the one story I wanted to share is I went for an interview at Salesforce. My resume went in. My name is fairly white sounding. There was 2 interviewers, a Southeast Asian lady who was the hiring like the decision maker, and an Israeli guy. I always got along well with Israelis for some reason. This guy loved me in the interview. The lady was not in the interview. She walks in, takes one look at me, her face changed. I'm an empath, so I read not just what people say, but body language. And I read auras and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, she's not having any of this, any of me. Like, don't know why. And it was literally just visual. So now looking back, I'm like, oh, I was probably racial. Okay, whatever. I didn't get the job. Sorry, you're just not a fit. Later, I ended up working for a Salesforce partner, and we were co-selling with her division. She was leading FinServe at Salesforce. And I was like, I remember that interview, and I was just asking some of her AEs, hey, man, like, what's up with this girl? And they were like, yeah, she's, whoa, yeah, exactly what you thought, bro. Exactly what you thought. So Canada is like really subtle with that stuff, because Canadians are passive aggressive. A lot of people think Canadians are polite. They're not. They're just passive aggressive. They'll, open the door for you, and then stab you in the back on the way in. So racism is like that. There, you can never put your finger on it, right? And to me, I would rather. So when my roommate in New York worked in the chemical industry, so he worked in like refineries in Louisiana, and he told me a lot about the good old boy culture. He's a black guy with an African name, Kasim. After 9/11, he had a lot of trouble flying. Let's just leave it there. So he was telling me about the experience in Louisiana of open racism. Like they'd be driving back from the refinery. All of his teammates are white. They're looking for a drink, and he's driving. He pulls into a parking lot, and they're like, no. Let's no, we can't stop here. It's like a honky tonk bar. It's like, and he doesn't know, right? They're like, no, we're going. And he's like, okay, right. That kind of open racism where you walk in and you get called boy and stuff like that. I kind of prefer that because you know where people stand. So here's the final thing I'm going to say. The reason I prefer that is because even though there was racism, that one incident I mentioned, I'm sure there were others, but this is the one that comes top of mind. I'm happy that happened because my mission on Earth, I believe I've discovered my soul path. I know what I'm here for. All of life is not fair. In fact, Earth is a school, and it's like the hardest school in the freaking universe. It's like the Harvard of the universe. Souls incarnate here on Earth. Getting a little esoteric. Really sorry. Souls incarnate here to go through lessons and to have experiences. And these are the challenges that we face. Yes, we were born in brown skin, but I think we kind of chose that. And I'm glad these experiences happened because they sharpened me. They gave me more perspective on the human condition. And honestly, they didn't fucking slow me down. I'm awesome. I'm a superstar. And I manifest that shit. If I'm in lack, I attract lack. If I am looking for racism, I'm going to find racism. If racism happens, I'm like, oh, I see you. All right. Gotcha. And then I just find the workaround. I find the level somehow. Like water will find its level, and so do I. So I welcome all this, and that may be a contrarian perspective, but that's kind of where I'm at.
So I got to RevOps. I walked into a company about 20 years ago, and they said, I need to know what my pipeline is. Here's a computer. They had no idea. It was a smaller organization. Well, they're about 9 years old, though, at the time. And so from that point on, it was problem solving, figuring out how do I get this information for them. And then once I did, right, I was then in love with, at the time it was sales operations. And then the more that the company grew, the more other areas started to come in, right? Then we had marketing, and then there was customer success and support and product. There were a lot of different areas that I had an opportunity to solve for. So that was my way in. If I piggyback on this conversation, though, to talk about my journey, there's this graphic called The Problem. And I'm not certain if you guys have seen this graphic. It's called The Problem. If you go Google it, you'll find it. That graphic is every experience I've ever had in every workplace, with the exception of my consulting jobs. And what it does is you walk into a company and you're apprised, you're great. It's either you're tokenized, you're great, everything is awesome. The second step of that is you start to say, we need to do the following things differently. We need to be better at this. Our data is telling us these things, and it goes against something, and then a narrative starts to develop. That's the first level of being a problem, right? So then it's you're aggressive, all the microaggressions start, right? You're aggressive, you're angry, all the things that I'm not. All the things start to develop, right? It's not a good fit, right? There are problems. Now they never fire you, right? But you have to sit and take this repeated injury over and over and over again, right? And you have to deal with all the sort of subsequent things too, right, that are going on in the workplace. The job of operations in itself is hard. It's a thankless position. No one jumps up to say, oh, the operations team is doing amazing, right? No matter how good it really is. Right? The minute that the data starts to tell a narrative that people don't want to hear, it's really a problem. So you put all of that together, and that has been my experience. I have never been promoted without a fight. Now, mind you, I got where I was going. Remember, I said I've operated at the highest levels in organizations, been an executive there. No one ever gave me any of that. I've watched people be given lots of things, though. So my experience has been that, but I don't harbor that and say that it's not possible. It makes me think about how we make this better for others in the future. And one part of that is excusing those who don't know any better, right? And I say that with all kinds of love in my heart. I excuse them because they don't know any better. Because if they knew better, I have to believe that they would do better. There's a lot of people who are just bad people, right? And we can find those folks and we can identify them, and we try to stay far away from them. Most of the people that we encounter at work in these scenarios are not bad people. It goes back to the system. They're operating in the system that they've been given to operate in, one that gives them a lot of advantages, one that provides us with lots of disadvantages. When we walk in that room, we are immediately Black people. I don't care what anybody says, right? They can go, I'm colorblind, I don't see this, I don't see that. But when we walk in that room, we're immediately Black people and we're immediately disadvantaged. That's the piece and the part that we have to adjust, not necessarily just more of us in a place, but how do we actually break these systems down so that people understand what's really happening? And the defensiveness that comes when you say, hey, I think you're being, I think there's some bias here. If that defensiveness doesn't stop, then we're never going to find ourselves advancing the way we need to, because admitting that there's a problem is the beginning of solving any particular issue. So that is my piece. That's how I started, and it's what I think about what my experience has been here today.
Ooh.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And kind of what I heard was, we were all trying to break into the same system, what you mentioned earlier, Tisha. And so even though we came from different backgrounds, we dealt with different people, we even worked in different functions in that system, we still ran into those exact same roadblocks. And I think everybody on this call that, is a Black person can have a story just like that. Where somebody was holding them back simply because of their biases against the color of your skin, which is not acceptable in the workplace or elsewhere, really, anywhere. Yeah. Any other thoughts on this before we move to the next question?
Let's do the next one. Let's do
cool.
it.
So next one, it's kind of connected. Why do we have a lack of diversity in RevOps? Why is there only 4 Black faces that we can put on this call to discuss being leaders in revenue operations, and why is that important?
Would you guys let me start this one, and then
Yeah.
I'll be short and sweet.
Please do.
You're
welcome.
Take my time.
So the first is this idea that we've got to take a more strategic approach to education, right? People don't have access to information that tells them that this is a possibility for them. Why is that? Because of the way that we see education, right? So we see education as going to college, and that's really it. That is not the end all be all. You can train people. People can have different experiences that lead them to a path of operations, revenue operations, marketing operations, sales operations. So that's one. The other is that we cannot dismiss that the digital divide is huge. So much of the work that we do is based on technology and information, data analysis, these things. If you don't have access, right, to computers or internet, and we're behind by 5 to 10% in those areas. So while the majority of U.S. households have computers, they have the internet. Computers, we're 5% behind. Internet, we're 10% behind. And remember, we're only 13%. So those numbers are really big for us. So when you put all of that together, a lack of education, right, and not just traditional education, a lack of access, then you end up with people not even knowing that this is a true, real possibility for us. We are capable of anything, but if we don't know about it, right, if no one in our family has ever been deep into revenue operations, then it's highly improbable that we're going to see many faces like ours in this space.
Yeah. I want to expand on that too a little bit because I get targeted with ads with coding boot camps, right? So immediately in my mind, I think of tech, I think of engineering. I don't think of anything else, not even sales. And so, it's about also getting that out there because even if you don't have a computer yet, almost everyone has a phone and there's Wi-Fi places and you're getting targeted all the time with Instagram and Facebook ads. Join this boot camp, do this, Black in tech, coding, blah, blah, blah. What if we had that for operations roles too? So it's to expand on what Tisha said, it's that access can start right here.
Okay. Why don't we put this into action? Everybody on this panel, we're going to brainstorm after this about creating the curriculum for a course, which we then promote. $5 to $10 in Facebook ad spend, and we get it out there. We've
Yeah,
got the
another
right here.
Yeah, no, I was going to say another thing too is doing outreach at colleges and community colleges too, because I went to a state school in California in the Bay Area that if you walked down the main part of the campus where there's, the buildings are on each side and there's like the student center, I was surprised by the diversity of the campus, even though I was not in maybe a diverse program in economics, but you can walk down and see Black people, African people because they're dressed in, their African traditional clothing, Asian people, white people, Islanders. Like it was just so awesome to have that experience to like see that. One of the like rare times in my life where I felt like part of something. So I think the more too that we can go and speak at schools and talk about our experience at schools, maybe even high school. I've kind of toyed around with that idea. I don't know how hard it is to go get on the speaking list at a high school. But when they do career days and things like that. So again, it's a way to see people who look like you and expose them to other career options, especially ones that are not technical or not engineering, where you can make good money and do cool work, but not have to go through a coding program.
I love it.
Teachers will do anything for a guest speaker. I'll come speak at your school. I love kids too. I think that they truly are the future. They're so inspiring. And then we have an opportunity and the honor to then, teach and inspire them too.
Here's the thing, like RevOps is so new relative to say, or awareness of RevOps is small compared to say awareness of tech as coding or tech as other things, or even of marketing. We have the opportunity to kind of help shape that. I mean, look at this panel. We're all, Black, and we're all accomplished in our own right, and we kind of all get RevOps. We should package this up and kind of promote it. So the kids at these community colleges where it is really diverse, they can see, oh, this is an option. And not only is it an option, I can see myself in these people. I know it can be done because they're doing it right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it looks like it might be easier than I thought to go speak at school. So I'm going to take that away as my action item to look in my community and see where I can start doing that. Because I live in Sacramento, and there's a decent Black population here too. So there's a couple of community colleges. There's a state school, Sac State's around me. So I'm gonna look into that and see what I can do from my end down here.
Amazing.
There are also these programs cropping up all over the place, mostly coming out of different communities, right, in the RevOps space, where people can get some practical hands-on training in revenue operations. I know that, I just came out of this company, so I know this Sales Impact Academy has a RevOps school. I know that I think Pavilion has RevOps classes. I know that Sales Impact Academy also has a foundation that provides support to people who need to take some of these courses. These are things that we need more of, right? There has to be more practical training and then more access to that training, right? By providing support, right? Like everyone can't afford to spend a couple $1,000s on a course. So can we put together more funding, right? That then allows people to take on that training. And then in addition to that, the rest of us who have already made some way in these spaces, right? And Asia, we kind of had this comment going on LinkedIn. Our job is to bring people along. So when we find that our cousin, the construction worker or whatever, right, is capable of doing so much more, right, then we bring them into that space and we say, here's something you can do and make a lot more money doing it, something that's far more sustainable, something that won't dry your body out, right? You'll be able to work for a long time in this space and continue to develop. So lots of opportunities to be provided to folks.
Yeah. I think too, with revenue operations being so trendy and new right now, there's a lot of opportunity here. So how can we get, folks into this, there's so much opportunity right now with RevOps. You see all these job descriptions, all these postings, people are talking about talent pipeline is broken or non-existent for these roles. And it's like, well, let's get in there.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to say 100%. I think that there is a lack of clarity around so first off, when you go into RevOps, they want people with RevOps experience already. That's one of the issues. And so going to a college and saying, hey, you in the finance department, once you graduate, you come and be an analyst or RevOps analyst and learn, making those career connections from an HBCU directly into your pipeline for talent pool is one way of improving sort of what we're seeing from a statistics piece on having more Black people in RevOps. But the other piece is across the board in general, what is your retention of those Black people? How are you making sure that their experiences are positive experiences and that they are heard, seen, and valued? Because that's the other issue. I mean, you can hire as many people as you want to, but that doesn't stop them from walking out the door because their manager is not being reprimanded for their actions, and they don't get in trouble for the harm that they have caused us in the various situations that we alluded to earlier. And so I think that's the missing piece. The recruiter and the HR sort of framework that they're moving from a RevOps perspective does not include targeting people in college that would typically have the know-how and the operations mindset to be able to succeed in revenue operations, and having them start up from associate, analyst, et cetera, those lower level roles, and giving them the chance, the opportunity, the thing that we've been talking about this entire time.
Yep. Well, absolutely. Opportunity is everything. I don't care how you slice it. You can put the pie 50 different ways. If there are no opportunities that come out of it, then there will be nothing. And part of the opportunity is that when people are supportive of someone in a role and there's an opportunity for that person to grow, even if that growth is above them, you have to take the opportunity to push those people forward. When you get into the room, you have to speak their name, right? Because if you don't, then that opportunity will not exist. So there's so many different elements of what opportunity actually means, and we're going to have to dig a little bit deeper, right, into exactly how we systematically go about making these adjustments.
That's right.
All right, I hate to cut everyone off, but we did reach the end of our time, and I want to thank everyone on the panel and every attendee that came for showing up and being authentic and really sharing some value here. So thank you again, everyone. We have recorded this. We will be releasing it as a post and a video recap so that this can be digested over and over again. And so I'll leave it to the panel at the end. Final thought and the best way to reach you.
Final thought. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending, listening, being open. Take and learn from this and, help others, uplift others, be an advocate every opportunity at every corner, every single day to, present some sort of support or helping hand to another person and, think about change. And so I've dropped my link to LinkedIn in the chat. Follow me, and I'd love to stay connected.
Yeah, that's so great, Brianna. I love that you said, just help others when you can. I have been trying to do that for the last couple of years now. Like I open up my LinkedIn to whoever and, message me if you have questions about revenue operations or how to get into it, or, you want to talk about your experience being a Black woman in corporate world, whether you're in tech or not. Like, I think just sometimes having those conversations, like I remember when I met Brianna, I was like, oh my gosh, I got to connect with this amazing individual. And so as much as we can do that, I think we should. And then the other thing is, if there's anyone, out there who's maybe not Black, sitting with the discomfort and sitting with being uncomfortable for a little while, because these conversations are uncomfortable sometimes. And you just have to sit with that for a minute. It's uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good, but the way that we get through it and we move past it and we're able to work through these things in a productive way is to sit with that discomfort and process it, not try to push it aside or do things to avoid it. I dropped my LinkedIn in the chat too, and I'm always around to chat. This is a great discussion.
This was a great discussion. I actually learned more than I was able to share. So thank you, fellow panelists, for broadening my perspective. I'm happy to connect with anyone as well. I guess my final thought would be, my personal ethos is to be useful and to be of service. That's how I try to approach everything. And I think that allows me to be the change I want to see. I attract opportunities because of that mindset, and I can't prescribe for anyone else, but I'm just going to say that that's worked out for me. It's life is working out because of that. So I love to see that same attitude among my fellow panelists, and I encourage that in our audience as well.
I think I've already.
Yeah, you're up.
Say it again.
I think that Tisha, did you give your parting thoughts? And
my parting thoughts are actually, I put them in the chat. If we can love one another, I know that sounds crazy at work, but I'm dead serious when I say it. That is really the savior of the things that we're talking about, because respect comes out of being, we can have respect just for being human beings. And if we demonstrate some love out of that, then I think we can make a lot of this stuff a little easier for ourselves. So those are my thoughts.
I love that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, thank you. All right, well, I'm going to end the room now. Thanks again for everyone who showed up, and many, many thanks to the panel. I hope that you've all reached out to each other and connected so that you can continue this conversation. This shouldn't be the last time that any of us speak about this, even this week. So that's what I'll leave you all with, and looking forward to seeing the next step from everyone on this panel, because I know there are great things ahead.